Hello BookTube, and welcome to Last Week in BookTube. This is a feature that I did on this channel for a long time where I look back at my last week or so of viewing on YouTube and tell you about some of it, the highlights, some of the things that really interested me, some things that I think would interest you on the chance that you didn't see them. Not meant at all to be comprehensive. I watch a lot of YouTube and a lot of BookTube. And not at all meant to be a ranking either. This is the stuff that made it. This is the stuff that merited your attention. Just picked from sort of a mental survey of the previous week of mine. I would like to revive Last Week in BookTube. I've been enough people asking for it over the year or so since I stopped regularly doing it, that I'd like to revive it, and I'd of course like it to be a Monday event. And it was meant to be, but yesterday it was pouring rain here and dark as twilight, and the rain had sleet in it, and when the conditions are like that, the Wi-Fi, my upload speed here at Hyde Cottage just dies. It just dies completely. So I tried, but it didn't work, so I'm going to do this again, and we'll see. Today is still freezing cold, but it is at least bright skies, so this might upload. So this is going to be Last Week in BookTube for 11 May 2020, and I'm going to organize it in circles here. So we'll start with BookTube, and then we'll move out to YouTube, and then we'll move out to the broader world, and then I will finish with one particular highlight, one thing that really made me smile the broadest for that week, regardless of which of those circles it falls in. So first we'll do BookTube. And keep in mind, I'll leave a link to all these things down below, but keep in mind, these are just the skimmings. And this is also happening at a slightly disadvantageous time to revive Last Week in BookTube for two reasons. One, BookTube is undergoing a radical shift. It's changing. Its content is changing because people are locked in their homes. People aren't going out and about, and that is changing the nature of the videos that we're seeing. The videos are getting more creative, more inventive, more wide-ranging, maybe a little bit more squarely. It's been absolutely fascinating for me to watch. In 2021, somebody's going to do a retrospective video documentary or whatever on how this pandemic changed BookTube, and I will be fascinated to watch that. So that's one aspect that makes Last Week in BookTube this week or at any time, you know, in this spring, a little difficult. And the other is that May is a surfeit of BookTube events, and that also has an effect on Last Week in BookTube, because although I might love to watch all the Maybe Midrash videos from Maybe Midrash, or Tome Topple has a new round out, or what I jotted down some of these: Owl's Magic Readathon, Bookimon, Light versus Dark Romance Readathon, May is for Magazines, and a million other things. Although I might love to watch those videos, they make more sense in the context of their events than they do as standalones. So it's unlikely they would make a list like this. So that also made this dicey. But we're going to try. There are a few BookTube videos that I want to list for you here. The first one is by Courtney Ferriter, America's Jewish Mom. And she did the BookTube newbie tag. She's a new BookTuber. She has a wonderful style and comes to BookTube from the world of composition teaching. Composition teaching, as I know perfectly well, I have the scars to prove it, is an amazing experience. Good and bad, it's an amazing experience. So I'm assuming that more and more of that will come through in her videos. You're going to love her BookTube newbie tag. Then Claudia at Spinster's Library asked the question, are we reading more classics in lockdown? A thing that has been in the back of a lot of people's minds for the last 3 months is that in 2019 and 2018 and whatever, we just reflexively said, a lot of people just reflexively said, well, if I ever did have a long stretch of uninterrupted reading time at home, I'm sure that I would pull down the classics and read them. At long last, I would give them the attention that I know they deserve. And I think in 2017, 2018 and whatnot, when people thought about that hypothetical, they thought about something like a twisted ankle or a broken leg. They didn't think about everybody doing it all at the same time. But the question stands, now that we are in that situation, what is happening with that quasi-unformed resolution? And Claudia's video, of course, if you watch her channel, her videos are all incredibly smart and with a very nice, dry sense of humor. So you see what her answer to that question is. Then we can come to a book review. There are a couple of book reviews on this BookTube list because I myself am a book reviewer. So, and I'm not only am I a book reviewer, but I'm a book reviewer who's never quite figured out how to do book reviews on BookTube. I've done lots and lots of videos, but formal front to back book reviews, I don't know. There's a part of me that just so reflexively thinks of that as a print thing, a written thing, that I haven't really completely made the jump. Especially since a BookTube book review would not necessarily be the same as a print review. And some booktubers get that, and they get it really well. I've got a few on here. One is KaytheReader, who does a review of Brown Sugar and Spice by Mathis Bailey, which is a sequel to his previous book, and I have not read either one of them, which put me in a perfect position to enjoy the reviews, because this review, you'll know whether or not you're in a perfect position, whether or not someone's doing a good job at being a book reviewer, if you don't feel like you're missing out when you experience their review, even if you haven't read the book. And that was definitely true here. It's just perfectly done, just perfectly done. And then in terms of reviews, but also in terms of are we reading classics when we're in lockdown, Alan Moreton, who's changed his channel title to The Book Traveler, gives us a review of A Midsummer Night's Dream by William Shakespeare. And that is fantastic. He's been doing a lot of re-engaging with classic canonical works while in lockdown, and that has been fascinating. It's just fascinating to watch. Let's see here. Hannah at Hannah's Books. A lot of you will know her channel. She is the brainy type. She does a video about in what kinds of ways this is a time for creativity, because she is in lockdown with spending a much larger than normal amount of time with people that she technically on paper loves, but I mean, she does love them, but when you're locked in with someone, that produces mental challenges of its own. And one of the things that I love about this kind of video, or her video in particular, is how fascinating she is on subjects that I know nothing about, that I have never done, that I will never do. Craft work, baking, that sort of thing where it's just fascinating for me to listen to it, especially when it's talked about in such an intelligent way, such a feeling way. I just loved it. And then Justin at Ghost Reader did another book review, Gotz Aly's Europe Against the Jews. We saw it on this channel. I loved the book. I thought it was very complex, and I loved his review of it. Just exactly what I'm talking about here. The flip side of Brown Sugar and Spice, because that is a book I did not know existed, and I have never read. Don't know anything about it. Whereas Gotz Aly's book I've read. And so I got another vantage point for enjoying a book review, because it's a fantastic job. The video is just a really good job at assessing the book, talking about it, summarizing it, and then assessing it critically. I'll someday have to figure out how to do that on this channel. Let's see here. Brian, my arch nemesis at Bookish, had the gall, the nerve, the unmitigated temerity to revisit Cormac McCarthy's Dude Bro Bible, All the Pretty Horses, specifically in light of my own caustic criticism of McCarthy as the high pope of Dude Bro Lit. Brian went at All the Pretty Horses to see whether or not it was Dude Bro Lit, and what ways it was and what ways it wasn't, and comes to the Steve-defying conclusion that it's not entirely Dude Bro Lit, that there's one character at least that saves it and makes it maybe something more. Proving to me once again that when time and circumstance finally permit Brian and I to meet in person, we should sell tickets to the debates that we will have. And let's see here. Talking about book reviews, this is one with that right in the title, Mike's Book Reviews, a channel that I have loved watching in the last week, but I don't think I knew about it before then. And the guy has lots of subscribers and a very passionate fan base. That his discussions in his comments fields are fantastic, which is the mark of a genuine booktuber instead of, some fake plastic carpetbagger who just wants a base audience for their book, for the book they'll write down the line. He's engaging with his listeners, with his viewers all the time, and does lots of reviews. But the video that I have in mind is more of a meta thing, which he's also very good at. He does a video asking the question why you should read Michael Crichton. And I've mentioned on this channel that I have my reservations about Michael Crichton, mainly because of Climate of Fear, his climate change denying book, which came out at a time and was disseminated to an audience big enough so that if it had been telling the truth, instead of consciously lying, Crichton was no fool. He knew exactly what he was doing. He knew exactly what he was falsifying in that book. And if instead he had written about climate change the way we know, the way we knew at the time that he wrote the book, climate change was shaping up to be, it might have changed a lot of minds. We might be looking literally at a different world now. That's a lot of power that mega best-selling airport novelists have, and he had it and abused it. And that wasn't the only book that he abused it, and he gets the most heat for that book. But his book on Japan, his book on sexual harassment, there are currents running throughout those novels that really hurt his bank of credit with me. But there have also been books of his that I've really liked. It's amazing to me that I don't have a copy of Timeline, for instance, which I think is a terrifically enjoyable novel, even though it has massive gaps in it and was made into a hideously awful movie. But I don't have a copy. I don't have a copy of Jurassic Park. The only book of his that I actually have right now is Dragon Teeth, which was not written by him. It was not plotted by him. It was not outlined by him. It was not even conceived by him. It was never discussed by him, despite what its foreword says. Its foreword tells all the usual lies about how this was in the, it was in the back drawer of a desk, a completed manuscript. Who knew? But that's the only one that I have. I have that because I reviewed it. I've gone the whole gamut with Michael Crichton. I've written positive reviews. I've written negative reviews. I've sent letters to the editor, and I've also talked with him in person. And yet, it would never have occurred to me that there was grist for the mill to make a video called Why You Should Read Michael Crichton. And Mike's Book Reviews does a great job at that. Whether it ended up convincing me or not, it's a fantastic piece of book-related video making. So I'll leave a link to it. And that is BookTube specifically. That section will get bigger, I imagine, as I get my feet underneath me and get more accustomed to doing Last Week in BookTube again. But now we'll move out to broader YouTube. And I will, again, leave links to all these things in case they interest you. And the first one we'll deal with is Tom Scott, who is young, but who is still what I call, what I think counts as a futurist. Someone who excels at taking the present day and extrapolating patterns and trends into the future. I think that with a lot of futurists, the yardstick shouldn't be how accurate their predictions are. It should be how interesting their predictions are. How much they get you thinking about the future, whether or not their specific predictions are right. And Tom Scott is fantastic at that. He's a terrific presenter, terrific on-camera presence. And the video that I'm talking about, this specifically, he asks, he's doing a series on the basics of computing. All of it is worth watching. All of it. It's amazing. But he does this particular video for this week was asking the question, are there any problems that computers can't solve? And the twist that the video takes about halfway through into the realm of complete Mobius strip paradox caught me by surprise and really, really made me think. I loved it. Then we'll go from Tom Scott, of course, has millions of viewers. We'll go from a very large online presence to a very small online presence to the Weathersfield Proctor Library up in Vermont, the best little library in the country, which has Mark Richardson of Richardson Reads as its library director. And of course, like so many libraries in the country, the Weathersfield Proctor Library has been shut down. It closed its doors to the public, so they've had to make do. Like all other libraries, they've had to scramble and get creative to help serve their patrons and to help remind their patrons that they're still there, that there is still a community here. And one of the ways that they did this is for Glenna, who works at the library, to do storybook readings for children. And she did one this time around that I will leave a link to. It's she's very good at it. I have seen children's storybook readers. Of course, I worked for a long, long time in bookstores, so you get very accustomed to children's storybook readers. And I've seen them do really bad jobs, where they just don't get it. They don't get what they're supposed to do. And I've seen them do really, really good jobs where they hold the children spellbound. I have even been, in the course of that long stretch of time, I have even been dragooned into doing children's hour myself, children's story hour myself. And I don't know how you would measure whether I was good or bad at it. in the 2 or 3 times that it was done, the children's manager, would tell me what book I was going to read, and it never happened. It never happened. I would start, and then the children and I would just start talking to each other. The book would sort of get set aside as I would be asking them questions, and we'd be bouncing questions around each other and be laughing our heads off, talking about people and funny animals. I would be telling them stories, but not the story in the book. I would be telling them stories, and they would be... It was wonderful. It was wonderful fun for me, and I had a number of children's managers say, okay, well, the kids really love that, but the parents are really confused. They thought this is the book that's being read, and they can't argue with the result because their kids were overjoyed, but Glenna she sticks to the script. I will leave a link. Her videos are wonderful. Then there's a science explaining channel, Kurzgezagt, they do these animated videos, and they are also really, really good. And their latest one is called Why Are You Alive? And it reflects on entropy. And all this stuff sounds very boring, except for Glenna, until you go and watch it. When you go and watch it, you'll find that it isn't boring at all. And this video reflects on entropy. It reflects on the tendency of the universe to be dead and boring. And how once cells developed, once they were able to put a wall between themselves and the outside world and start regulating what happened inside the wall and how it related to what was outside the wall, suddenly those cells, those organisms, made themselves interesting. They separated themselves from the dead and boring universe and became alive. And it's amazing. No matter how much you know about biochemistry, you're still going to like it. You're still going to like it. Then there's a channel called SciManDan. I've had a great deal of fun watching this channel right from the beginning. He gets most of his enjoyment out of mocking flat earthers. The flat earth movement had a massive shot in the arm in popularity, and the number of people subscribed to it in 2016. Can't imagine why. And this has led to a plethora of YouTube channels with fully grown functioning adults, hucksters, most of them grifters who just want ad revenue. They know they're lying. They just know there are plenty of people who don't know they're lying, who get on camera allegedly seeming not to care about the fact that when they're 40 they're going to need to apply for a job and that the internet is forever. They get on camera and say the sun is a few hundred miles up above. It's a disk inside a crystal firmament. So is the moon. So are the planets. The universe revolves around the earth. The earth is flat. And you just know these things. You go outside, you don't feel like you're spinning on a ball, so you just know these things. And of course, they purposely make themselves deaf to any of the science that has existed on the subject for the last 7,000 years. They just purposely make themselves deaf to it. And SciManDan has a wonderful, jolly old time ripping them to shreds. But this video is something different. The video that I'm recommending for this week is something different because it's just him behind a desk instead of him sitting on a chair in a corner of his room. And it's him giving a more formal scientific presentation that doesn't have anything to do with flat Earth. In this case, answering or tackling an age-old astronomy question: are we alone in the galaxy? Are we the only intelligent life? And he goes through, for the purposes of discussing that, he goes through the Drake equation, which was, it's more of a thought experiment than an actual mathematical equation. It's kind of funny to watch SciManDan at one point say, it's worth pointing out that we don't have exact calculations for a lot of these integers. Well, yeah, we don't have exact calculations at all. It's a thought experiment more than a mathematical equation. But it was developed, I don't know, 70 years ago or whatever, to try and quantify what you would need in order to become a civilization that might be considered intelligent and that other intelligent civilizations might eventually become aware of. Is your planet in the right orbit to have liquid water? Do you develop technology? Are you intelligent? Do you have hands? Do you not eliminate yourself? Do you then develop the right science to reach out of your world and all that sort of stuff? And there's of course no way to calculate any of that because we're the only example. There's an example size of 1. The Drake equation and SciManDan's video are more exponents of optimism than they are of objectivity. They're more of dreaming that in a universe as vast, incalculably vast, as we now know our universe to be, even our galaxy, the numbers simply make the fact that this only happened once unbelievable. You would be drastically denying the odds of probability to have that be true. I myself don't think that's true. I'm perfectly happy to smile when science fiction fans are optimistic about alien life, but I think the odds are a lot higher than Drake himself or SciManDan or Carl Sagan seems to want them to be. There are an enormous number of factors that have to go in your favor, and they are random. And they all have to go in your favor, or you don't get to even the first rung of Drake's equation. If you're in a solar system, your planet has to be in just the right kind of quote-unquote Goldilocks zone. It has to be protected by an atmosphere from lethal clouds of solar radiation. It has to be protected by random chance from massive coronal ejections from your own star. The star that Earth currently goes around periodically does massive coronal ejections. If one of those were to directly strike the planet, if it were slightly larger than usual and were to directly strike the planet, it could easily kill all life on the surface. Some life in the deep vents of the oceans might live, but humanity, a civilization that could grow and develop technology, would certainly be wiped out. Also, massive terrestrial impacts. Earth has had quite a few in its history, but most of them have been in the very, very distant history. If an asteroid the size of Texas were to hit the Earth, all life on the planet would end. That would be a life-extinguishing event. And that just hasn't happened. That's all. But it's random chance that it hasn't happened. Our solar system is absolutely full of hard rock debris left over from the formation of the planets. They're all on eccentric orbits, but those orbits get changed all the time. Think about balls running around a funnel. It just hasn't happened. That's all. And that's to say nothing of extra solar system visitors that might come in, and just by random chance. It's just random chance, but it's random chance that goes wrong, I imagine, for a lot of planets. A lot of them. And it hasn't happened. Life has never been completely extinguished on this planet. It keeps a toehold, and it survives near extinction level events. It has done that many times, but then the march upward to complexity, intelligence, manual dexterity, and technology has to start all over again. And there's also the fact that if some nearby star supernovas, then the wave front of intense, lethal radiation that comes off that can sweep through nearby solar systems. And it's not like the flash of your X-ray at your dentist. It lasts 1,000 years. That wave of lethal radiation would cook everything in the solar system for 1,000 years. And that has happened to plenty of planets in plenty of solar systems in our galaxy, but it has, by random chance, never happened to Earth. And so on, and so forth, and so on, and so forth. So I myself think that the Drake equation could be far more dire. I think the odds against anyone getting even as far as humans have got in the Drake equation's progression are astronomically high, no pun intended. But you can make up your own judgment, because SciManDan does a great job of breaking down the equation. So that's a recommendation. And that is larger YouTube, and then we'll go to the outside world. For just briefly, we'll go to the outside world. And of course, the big event in the outside world this week was the Pulitzer Prize. The Pulitzer Prize was announced and awarded, and I followed those citations as they were rolling out, but I confess I mostly followed them for journalistic reasons, for colleagues, friends of mine, rivals of mine, people in investigative reporting, people in commentary, and especially people in criticism, to see whether or not any of the people who won were friends of mine or enemies of mine, or whether or not anybody was a finalist, because the finalists are published as well. And it was a clean sweep. I didn't know anybody, and a lot of the work that was honored there I very much agree with honoring. But when you tick all the way down to arts and letters, I did look, of course, at the awards for fiction and poetry and drama and history and biography. And I'm not going to talk about drama or poetry. I'm not really up on those. And unfortunately, this year I'm not going to talk about history either. The Pulitzer Prize is beset, as prizes have been lately, I believe, with a large tendency towards virtue signaling, towards meritocratic writing awards and instead think, well, in addition to being that, we've also got 4,000 years of human history to sort of redress, and it kind of falls on us. Not legislation, but in countries, not laws that make everybody equal, but rather it kind of falls on us. So although, like for instance in the case of the Booker, so although all of us think this book deserves the prize, we're going to split it, or we're going to give it to somebody else, and we're going to vaguely hint at that in after the fact interviews because of demographics or gender or skin color or some other kind of politics of current year rather than the words on the page. And I myself can't think of any other reason why the winner for history was the book that it was. It is, by anybody's measure, a completely minor work and largely unknown. Most of the people that I know who read history exclusively and who were watching the Pulitzers emailed me and said, "What on earth? I've never heard of this book. Have you?" There was a scurry going on. And next week and the week after that, in major literary journals in the Western world, you're going to get people who have written very fast reviews of this book. And those reviews will all start with, "Well, of course we knew that it was brilliant, and now that's been confirmed." Fortunately, I do a list every year online for Steve Reads, part of Open Letters Review, where I give you a list of the best and worst books of that year in many categories, including history. So although if you look at that list for 2019, which is roughly the time frame these Pulitzers are looking at, you most certainly will not find the current Pulitzer winner of Best History. You will nevertheless find a whole bunch of books that are really worth your time to read. But it wasn't all disappointment, because the fiction award, for instance, went to The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead, and that's a terrific book. I tried my hardest. I knew what was coming as soon as it was announced. I knew that the Insta editorials were coming that would care only about, talk only about, mention only the social movement aspect of that win, which I think is an insult to Colson Whitehead and an insult to every other winner. With him, you're saying, those Insta editorials are saying, well, this is the noteworthy thing about you winning. Not that the book was any good, but that you're a black man. And the implied insult to everybody else is, well, you know, you only won because you were white. You didn't win honestly. Your book's not any good. Those editorials only muddy the water, and their prevalence is the reason why so many major awards, book awards, have gone 1, 2, or even 10 steps down this line of caring about the things they shouldn't care about. But those Insta editorials don't take away from the award. The award was well deserved because Nickel Boys is a terrific book. It's a terrific novel. And equally enjoyable for me, the winner for biography was a terrific biography. It was Benjamin Moser's biography of Susan Sontag, which features very prominently on my own list of best biographies of 2019. And so does another book that was on that list, Our Man by George Packer, that was one of the finalists for biography. So a lot of you were emailing me and asking me, what do you think about the Pulitzers? Are you going to make a video about the Pulitzers? And I didn't think that I had enough to say about the Pulitzers to make a whole video, which is kind of ironic coming from someone who can spend 30 minutes nattering about one book in the mail. But nevertheless, I didn't think that I had much original to say about it. I have bemoaned the kind of Nobel Prize style going after a book, awarding a book that no one's heard of. I've bemoaned that in the past plenty of times, so you didn't need to really hear me do it at length. But that was the event of the outside world that at least connects with BookTube. Was the Pulitzer Prize was announced, and that's going to be a huge shot in the arm to those books, especially when they're. I mean, the Susan Sontag book and Our Man are gearing up to be ready to come out in paperback. Now they'll have that little gold sticker on it, so that people, if these books are piled in bookstores, if we're back in print brick and mortar bookstores when those paperback comes out, that might be a boost to those books. That would be wonderful. I believe that the Susan Sontag book was my #1 pick for biography in 2019, or #2. But the spot would be swapped. It was either the Susan Sontag book, or it was Our Man. So it was great to see the Pulitzer taking my lead. And then that is the outside world. Now I want to finish up. I want to finish up these last week in BookTubes with one last thing that is part of one or another of these categories, but that really stood out for me. And in this case, it's a return to BookTube by a very old school, one of the original atheist YouTubers. Not privately, but one of the original YouTubers who made videos attacking organized religion and Christianity. One of the originals to do that long before most other people were doing that on YouTube. It was a boy, really, named Scott Clifton, who made a row of terrific, angry, argumentative videos that get better as they go along. They get smarter and better read as they go along. He is a very, very good video maker, a very, very good YouTuber, and also an actor, which helps a lot, right? Because he writes a script for his videos and has it right there, and that can get very awkward. If you have an elaborate, worded, carefully complex script right here, you can get to the point where you are looking at it like that, and it gets very distracting unless you're an actor, in which case you're used to doing that sort of thing. And boy, oh boy, his videos back when he was a boy are thrilling to listen to, even if you think that maybe they're a little bit bare-knuckled when it comes to attacking a religion that, after all, is a source of enormous comfort to an enormous number of people. And then he went away. He was an actor, so he got a job on soap operas, and that was that, I thought. But I guess soap operas aren't in production, and the studios aren't open. So a benefit of this virus is that he came back. His channel, Theoretical BS, came back. He came back with a long and wonderful video called Betting on Necessity, which is all about the modal ontological argument for the existence of God, or using the modal ontological argument for the existence of God to prove that God does not or cannot exist. It's a logic chopping. It's basically, the video is basically one exuberantly accessible lesson in logic. Terrific. Absolutely terrific. That sort of thing interests you. You must not miss this YouTuber. And if you watch this video and you're completely new to Theoretical BS, well, you have a back catalog of stuff to watch, and a lot of it is really, really good. He's if you know the world of professional atheists, he is much closer in logic and philosophy, in taking that approach to analyzing God arguments. He's much closer to someone like Matt Dillahunty than he is to Aaron Ra. But both of them, I think, were in part influenced by the videos that he made when he was a teenager. That's how impressive those videos are. So it was wonderful to see him come back, and I'm hoping that he sticks around. Since he made this video, he's also made an update, just a personal life update, and a little bit of housekeeping notes. And housekeeping notes are one of the things that people tend to do when they have started to get back into the YouTube mind frame. When they start to think, when they get up in the morning and they start to think that videos are part of their day now. Once you get into that mind frame, then you start to have in your mind an ongoing multi-segment conversation with your viewers. And I think that maybe has started. I would love it if this next week saw another video from him. I think that would be great. But anyway, that is your last week in BookTube, which I'm going to hopefully resume doing. I'm going to try and do this every Monday. Unless there's a huge hue and cry not to. I think I'm going to try and do this every Monday. And I will leave links to everything that I mentioned down below. And unfortunately, last week in BookTube will probably be long. These will probably be long videos like this one, so sorry about that. But I'll wrap this up for now, and I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.